We have some fantastic reporting here from Jenn Dize, who is with Courage News. She FOIA requested some information on the FBI's targeting of Aretha Franklin. So I'm going to read this thread that she put together, and I think this is quite revealing in terms of how the FBI views the black community and leftist leaders and revolutionaries, etc. So just fair warning, there are some quotes in here from the FBI that are very unsettling. This again, Jenn Dize, at Jenn Elizabeth J on Twitter. News: years ago, I FOIA'd FBI files on Aretha Franklin. Today I received the files. While incomplete, they show repeated and disgusting suspicion of the famed black singer, her work, and activists around her. 1976. Document states that a West Coast communist newspaper carried a story that the National United Committee to Free Angela Davis raised $38,000 and that Aretha Franklin sang at the event. Further, they claimed Franklin was associated with other, quote, black extremists and groups. And she's posting screenshots as we go. You guys, if you want to go read through all the details, I encourage you to go take a look at this thread. 1967, declassified in 2022. MLK's Southern SCLC 10th anniversary discussed on document titled Communist Infiltration of Southern Christian Leadership Conference Internal Security, noting Sidney Poitier and Aretha Franklin, popular entertainer, will also appear at the banquet. 1968 discusses SCLC labeling U.S. treatment of Vietnamese as genocide. FBI source discusses Aretha Franklin's father and also said, quote, SCLC leadership has taken a hate America and pro-communist line which the mass of Negroes will not recognize but which they will blindly follow. Look at that framing, you guys. Oh, my word. Where do you even start with that? 1971, Aretha Franklin's every move is carefully documented by the FBI. In this document, just now declassified, direct contact information and details of her Atlantic Records contract are discussed, presumably, quote, just in case. 1972, the FBI placed a false phone call using suitable pretext to determine who the recipient was of a phone call from the Black Panther Party. It was determined that the call was made to Aretha Franklin. The FBI described her as a, quote, noted Negro singer and entertainer. 1969, in a document excluded from automatic downgrading and classification, an unrelated disruption at a 1968 Aretha Franklin concert was swept into discussion of, quote, possible racial violence, major urban areas, racial matters. 1968, document discusses funeral plans for MLK, calling it a racial situation. It states, source advises Atlanta Braves Incorporated had donated Atlanta Stadium to SCLC for huge memorial concert. Above entertainers were to perform as were Sammy Davis Jr., Aretha Franklin. Of this group, some have supported militant black power concept. Performance at MLK Memorial by these prominent entertainers would provide emotional spark which could ignite racial disturbance in this area. 1966, the FBI frequently had sources and infiltrators feeding them very specific information from within the civil rights movement. Here's an example from these Aretha Franklin files. She, again, is posting screenshots of this FOIA information as she goes. 1973. There were frequent attempts to connect Aretha Franklin and other notable black figures to anything they deemed nefarious. This FBI doc follows up on claim that she was connected to the Black Liberation Army, any radical movement. The finding was that there was no evidence. I just really want to underscore that one, you guys. One of the most prominent strategies to try to delegitimize leftist and black revolutionaries and groups is to make some word or thing or concept, quote unquote, nefarious and bad, and then try to attach those groups to that thing. So we engage in decades and decades of Red Scare tactics, right? Constantly crying communism and framing communism as though it's this horrendous, awful thing. And then we try to attach these groups to it as a way to delegitimize them and stunt their ability to get the masses behind them and to form coalitions. That is a strategy that has been used for decades and decades by the FBI and their allies. 1985. It's important to note that many documents in these files are missing or remain heavily redacted. And she shows a few examples there. Quote, the CW, redacted, advised many OC figures own or control entertainers or groups. Some of the groups or entertainers and the people who control them that he is aware of are redacted, Michael Jackson, redacted, and Aretha Franklin by Stan Hoffman. 1979, Aretha Franklin had some incredibly scary things happen to her. 4 months after her father was shot in Detroit, she received a threat from a man who said he was going to kill her and her family. She was threatened many times over her career. 1974, another example comes in a letter. Quote, Dear Aretha, I'm in charge of you. I'm not to be crossed. You should be paying me some of my money. Evidently, your advisors do not know the dangers of neglecting what I'm saying. I would hate to drag your father into this. Interestingly, the FBI wrote, quote, the original letter and envelope are being sent to New York rather than submitted for fingerprint and lab examination. It's been handled by numerous persons since received. This handling would be the case with any mailed item, so I'm curious. Potential further info about why was redacted or what was redacted. I'm not sure which she meant there. On May 9th, 1974, an FBI document states that Cecil Franklin furnished a letter which was said to contain a threat against Aretha Franklin, SDNY, redacted, who declined prosecution in this matter, redacted, AUSA, redacted, stated additionally, redacted. You can see she's kind of making the point there that even when you successfully FOIA these kinds of documents, they often come heavily redacted and provide less information than you might want. But this fantastic reporting from Jenn Dize at Jenn Elizabeth J on Twitter, if you want to go give her a follow, and at courage_news is her organization. This just speaks to me to how the FBI has conducted itself in response to leftist organizers and revolutionaries and to black groups and organizers over, its entire history. Hoover was a raging racist, classist, and his institution reflected those views. So we all know the stories, you guys. Like, we all know that they've been involved in assassinations of Black Panthers, and we all know they were overwhelmingly likely to have been involved in MLK and Malcolm X. And I mean, you just go down the list, right? This is how the FBI and the feds have treated revolutionaries throughout history, and I thought it was very interesting that they were targeting Aretha Franklin and trying to connect her to nefarious groups. And even the heavily redacted documents have shown and proven that. So great work from Jenn Dize. Really encourage you guys to give her a follow.